Back in the days, the BMW E30 was produced here. At the time, it was the most sold car. At its peak, there were over 3,000 people working at this plant. The factory covers approximately 500,000 square meters. That's about the size of 70 football fields placed side by side. The workers here earned between 2,000 and 3,000 Deutsche Marks per month, the equivalent of around $1,800 to $2,500 per month now. BMW engineers did almost everything by hand. That's why, on average, it took around 40 to 60 hours to fully assemble one car from start to finish, unlike today's factories where they do it in just a few hours. Right now, you're watching machines that press steel into the body parts of the car. This part of the factory was, as you can hear, incredibly loud. Employees carefully checked each part to make sure it was shaped correctly, because if even one piece was slightly off, it could cause major problems later in the production line. These workers had to be fast and precise to keep up with the factory's high production rate. By the time a shift ended, thousands of car parts had been stamped and stacked, waiting to become part of a finished BMW E30. The presses slammed down with incredible force, over 1,000 tons, bending and cutting the metal in seconds. The sound echoed through the whole building, so workers needed to wear ear protection. Even though some of the stamping was automatic, workers were still key. They checked for cracks, they lined up sheets, they fixed anything the machines didn't get quite right. If a part didn't meet BMW's standards, it was tossed aside and melted down for recycling. Every piece had to be perfect. If the door was even a few millimeters off, it could throw off the entire build later on. In West Germany during the 1980s, workers here were among the best paid industrial employees in the country. A BMW assembly line worker earned the equivalent of 3,000 to 4,000 Deutsche Marks per month, which would be roughly $1,500 to $2,200 in today's US dollars. Skilled technicians or supervisors often made significantly more, crossing into 5,000 to 6,000 Deutsche Marks per month, depending on experience and seniority. That kind of wage was enough to support a comfortable middle-class lifestyle. Insane, right? This worker welded everything together. The floor, sides, and the roof started to connect here. Thousands of tiny welds were used to hold everything in place, as you can see. If one was even slightly off, the door might not fit. That's why factory workers had to know the car like a doctor knows the body. Today, this entire job has been taken over by robots, precise, fast, and consistent. But what they gained in speed, they lost in feel. In the 80s, every E30 body carried the fingerprints of the person who welded it. Each E30 had over 6,000 weld points across its body. Nowadays, a lot of the welding is done by machines. But back then, most of it was still done by hand. Workers in heavy gloves and masks had sparks flying in every direction. The air smelled like hot metal, and above all, it was loud and intense. One of the reasons the work paid so well. Factory workers didn't rely on just machines to check the alignment. They also used their eyes, their hands, and years of experience. They'd run their fingers along the edges, checking for rough spots or uneven gaps. And if something was off, they'd fix it, even if it took time. BMW's E30 production didn't sleep. There were typically 3 shifts. Early shift was from 6 a.m. till 2 p.m. The late shift from 2 p.m. till 10 p.m., and the night shift from 10 p.m. till 6 a.m. Kaleare. Shift premiums were paid, and of course, it was the highest when working a night shift. One of the most important parts of the factory back then was the so-called paint shop. Unlike nowadays where paint is sprayed by robots, it was in the 1980s sprayed by people, as you can see. Not even wearing proper safety masks or something while working for hours inside sealed rooms that smelled like chemicals and metal, can you imagine? But first came the anti-rust protection. The frame of the entire car was just like this, lowered into a massive tank filled with anti-corrosive fluid. This step, called E-coating, was absolutely critical. Without it, the car would start rusting before it even left the factory. The tank itself was deep, long, and filled with a specially formulated liquid that reached every corner of the metal body. As the E30's shell was dipped in, a low electrical current was applied. This anti-corrosion layer stuck to the steel, protecting the car for years, making sure the steel wouldn't rust over time, especially in tough winters or salty roads. In the 1980s, car factories like BMW were still very much male-dominated. Approximately 10 to 15% of the factory workforce at the time were women, unlike today's 25 to 30%. Women were most commonly employed in roles such as quality control and stitching of the leather. Heavier physical assembly roles, like pressing or suspension fitting, remained largely male-only due to both physical demands and cultural norms of the time. BMW offered a wide range of colors for the E30, and people still talk about how good that paint looks today. That's because each layer was carefully applied, baked, and inspected by hand. Right now, you're watching the production of the engine. From there, workers began carefully installing each internal component. Some of them had been doing this for 15, even 20 years. It was a real craft back then. These workers had been doing the job for 10, 15, even 20 years. They could tell if something was off just by the way a bolt turned. After assembly, every engine went through testing. Some were cold tested by turning the crank with electric motors. Others were fired up and ran briefly on a bench. There were no leaks, no misfires, no problems. What made BMW a dream job wasn't just the salary. German labor laws and BMW's own policies gave workers strong benefits, including 30-plus days of paid vacation per year, paid sick leave and health care, company cafeterias with subsidized meals, and childcare support for families. BMW also offered employee leasing or discount programs, so workers could drive what they built. This is the so-called marriage you see. This is when the painted car body, rolling in from one line, and the engine, transmission, and suspension, rolling in from another, connect with each other. The engine and chassis, complete with wheels, exhaust, brakes, and drive shaft, was waiting underneath. Above it, the painted body was slowly lowered by a large overhead crane. This step also showed how well BMW had planned every part of production, the timing and the working together between all departments. It all had to be perfect for the marriage to work smoothly. A key difference in the 1980 factories was that each group of 8 to 12 workers had a team leader who was both supervisor and mentor. There was real teamwork. If someone was behind, others helped out. Mistakes weren't shouted about. They were immediately corrected to produce one of the most classic cars ever built. The dashboard came pre-built with even the iconic check control light strip. Workers slid it in as a single unit and secured it by hand. Seats were bolted in by humans, not machines. And each one was tested for slide, tilt, and lock. Some E30s had basic, others had rich, hand-stitched leather. Even the carpet was laid by hand and glued in place. Did you even know that the E30 M3 wasn't even supposed to be a street car at first? BMW needed to build 5,000 road-legal versions to qualify for DTM racing. So they made the E30 M3 and ended up selling more than 17,000 of them. One of the most experienced workers would walk around the car with a clipboard and a checklist. If the hood didn't sit just right, it was sent back. No excuses. Inside the car, every switch, button, light, and dial was tested. Even the glove box had to open and close with the right click. The most interesting part was the so-called dyno test. The E30 was strapped to rollers, and the engine was fired up, just like this. In this test room, the car was driven at different speeds while sensors measured power, wheel alignment, and engine response. Fast forward to today, and that entire process has changed. In the 1980s, workers used hand tools, tightened bolts themselves, and physically moved parts into place. Welding was done by real people, wearing masks and gloves, surrounded by sparks. Today, this is all done by robots. Modern factories use giant robotic arms to weld, paint, and even install parts. These machines are fast, precise, and don't take breaks. They can almost work 24 hours a day, The job of a factory worker now is often to watch the robots, fix them if they stop, or check the final result. It's more about monitoring than building. The cars themselves have changed just as much. In the 80s, a car had maybe 5,000 to 10,000 parts. Most of it was mechanical: engines, wheels, brakes, a radio. There were few sensors, and no screens, GPS, or advanced electronics. Fixing a car was simple if you knew how things worked. Today's cars have 30,000 plus parts, many of them electronic. They're packed with computers, cameras, radar, and sensors. Even the seats and mirrors are controlled by chips. It's like a computer on wheels. While this makes cars smarter, it also makes them harder to fix and more expensive to build. The average price of a new car in 1980 was around $7,000 to $8,000 in the US. For that price, you could get something like a Ford Escort, a Chevy Cavalier, or a base model Toyota Corolla. Even some entry-level European cars like the BMW E30 started at around $13,000. And people could actually afford them, because the average yearly income in 1980 was about $20,000, meaning a new car cost roughly 35 to 40% of what someone earned in a year. As of 2024, the average price of a new car in the US is around $48,000. That's more than double the average yearly income for many people, especially younger buyers. Even basic models, like a Toyota Corolla or Honda Civic, can now start above $25,000, and options quickly push prices higher. So what happened? Well, cars today come with more technology, more safety features, more sensors, and way more electronics. That's great for comfort and protection, but it's driven prices way up. In the 1980s, you paid for metal, engine, and a radio. Now you're also paying for touchscreens and even software updates.